Well, tell us, I mean, wow, Native representation in Hollywood has come so far. I'm old enough to remember some of the old Westerns. I remember when Little Big Man came out. I remember when Dances with Wolves hit about 30 plus years ago. And now here we are, Killers of the Flower Moon. And of course, your riveting portrayal of Molly Burkhart. And where does that fall along that narrative? And how does the movie in your role factor into that progression of native filmmaking?
I mean, it's my first studio venture, so there was definitely some nerves wrapped up in what the representation was going to be. Because I mean, it's no secret to anybody, Marty is not native. um, but the way that he makes films, the first film of his that I ever saw, and my introduction to him as a filmmaker was Kundun. So I know a lot of people had nerves about how is the Reign of Terror going to be portrayed in the hands of the same guy who made Goodfellas and Casino. Is it going to be just like this montage of just atrociousness? Um, but then I also knew that Marty was capable of something as immersive and as tenderly made as Kundun was. So I had faith that it was going to be something that maybe felt like that. But there was great attention paid to just creating the world with people who come from it. And I remember one of the things that gave me such great relief was just early days when we're going around, when we're visiting with community members, knowing that the production had been out there for a year before any other actor set foot, building relationships with community and hearing what people had to say. The script would change if somebody raised their voice in the community. And Marty was just like, yeah, let's do that. He's so eager to get things right because he's that kind of filmmaker. He's that kind of human being. Um, One thing that set my mind so at ease, since I don't have a scope for it outside of just my own experience that's been popping off, as they say, in the last 5 years. But I was visiting just really briefly with Tantu Cardinal, and she said to me, she's like, the level of leadership on this, she was really kind of impressed by it. She said she wasn't used to it. I'd heard also when she had a meeting with Marty, she talked about how we're all a little bit punch drunk, you know. Um, so knowing that everybody, not just me with how I was tasked with creating Molly Burkhart, Molly Kyle, but all of the sisters, Tatanka playing John Wren, William beautifully playing Henry Roan, and having Henry Roan's descendants around him. It's we all were given so much voice in the characters we were creating because we come from that legacy. Like, even though a lot of the principal cast are not Osage, come from other nations, we draw upon our own experiences. Just knowing this whole history the government has with us being declared incompetent, of being wards of the U.S. government and not handling our own money. Blackfeet woman Eloise Cabela is the one who brought that to a federal case. So that's something that I was very familiar with following that case when I was in middle school through high school. Eloise was a friend of the family before she passed away.
Lily, let's talk a little bit about your background, your history. You grew up in Montana. You're a Browning girl, and
Yeah,
we've talked about you a lot on the show. I'll tell you. And a while back, we had Mike Morelli from the Missoula Children's Theater,
very
who you
cool.
worked with as a young person, and he talked about the importance of theater, not just as a way to train people to act, but actually as a way to instill life skills and leadership and all these other traits into young people. And talk a little bit about how you found your voice as an actor and what that training and what that whole process was like for you growing up.
I can't believe you tracked down Mike Morelli.
We do
Beauty
our
of
homework.
a beast. You did. Good job. Um, I mean, I just remember the first time I stepped on stage when Missoula Children's Theater came through. It was immediately after you had everybody just coming up to my mom and dad saying, like, we're going to see her in Hollywood someday. It's just the way that your community just really, when you're a kid, especially when you're good at something, the way everybody just kind of fawns over that and how good that feels to hear. It's like, you're good at this. It's And just knowing that, like, that helps you develop a sense of an individual identity and calling. But like, it's always grounded in community. It's like people want our own to do good because it reflects good on all of us, you know. It opens up opportunities for all of us. And it's always kind of felt that way, you know. Um, getting praised within your own family is really important, but when it's like your school is putting your little newspaper clippings just on the bulletin board for winning a gold medal at a dance competition, you know, and like
Mhm.
just seeing that encouraged and feeling that encouraged. And then yeah, like, even though there was a pretty significant part of my developmental years, we moved away from the res when I was 11 in 97. And then I went to school in and around Seattle until 2004. And then I just ran back home as soon as I could. Because I found just being in Seattle, even though there's community there, it's a little bit harder to access because everybody's so sprawled out, and just access being an issue anyway. It's hard to get everybody in the same place at the same time. I just was so lonely for Montana, I think partly because of that feeling, you know. So I went back to University of Montana, and then I stayed in Missoula after I graduated because like I felt like I was back home, and it was easier to drive back up to Browning and, you know, see my family, see our close family friends, to kind of hold that down and away from my parents who were still in the city, you know, go check in on Hallie Laurence, who was
Mhm.
just like so important to my family, kind of a surrogate grandma. And just yeah, I think one of the reasons I ran back when I was able to on my own, you know, just out of the house and getting back to Montana, going to UM where I knew there was going to be a lot of Blackfeet students, and just have that connection again. I'm so glad I did, because that's where my next steps as an actor really fully developed. It's like I didn't have the need, you know, I had my time being in an urban location and confronting people's stereotypes about who we were. And it's not like you don't confront that in Montana, but it's like being being around people who actually, you know, if they're not from the res or if they're not native, at least like grew up around us. It's like we weren't such a big mystery question mark. It gave me a lot more, I guess, creative freedom, that the stories that I wanted to tell, I wouldn't just constantly be having to confront people's misperceptions of us that have largely been created by like Hollywood. Could be close to community and create things in Montana. And that's beautifully, thankfully, what ended up happening.
Lily, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. And we're pulling for you. Good luck, okay?
Thank you. Anytime you want to talk more, just let me know.
I'm going to take you up on that for sure. All right. Thank you, Lily.